Hello and welcome back to our Messenger project. What we're going to be doing today is continuing our chat server class and creating the client class. So let's go ahead and go back to our project. And so here in the chat server, the first thing we're going to do is add a logged in message. So if a user logs in, everyone knows that user logged in. So here the first thing we need to do is get a string from the message client. So string message from client is equal to the input stream dot read UTF. And then we need to surround this with a try and catch. And we'll also create a string tokenizer. And this will make it easier for us to see who is sending the message. And we'll pass that the message from client. Do our import. And then we'll create a login name. And this is equal to the first token, so st.next token. And then we're going to have a message type, which we'll be using later on. And so now we're going to go to each of the clients. So we'll have a for loop. And we're going to print that this user has logged in. So int I is less than login names dot size, I plus plus. And so for each of the clients, we're going to get the socket. So socket p socket is equal to, we're going to cast socket from the vector. So client sockets. So element at I. Then we're going to create a new data output stream. Call this P out, and that's going to be the output stream from the socket. So P socket dot get output stream. And then finally, we're going to write to that output stream. So P out dot write UTF. We're going to use the login name plus has logged in. And so this is going to give us enough to allow us to print to each user that a new user has logged in. So now let's create the client. So we'll call this chat client. And this is going to extend JFrame and implement runnable. So import swing and add the run method. Create some variables that we need. So the first one is going to be a socket and a text area. So J text area, call it TA. We'll import java.net. And since this is a runnable class, we'll create a thread. And we'll have data input and output streams. So call this d in and d out. And a string for the login name. Next, we'll create our constructor, and this constructor is going to take a string argument. Call this login. We'll call the superconstructor to name the JFrame, and we'll set the login name to login. We'll also initialize the text area, so TA equals new J text area. And we'll make that 18 by 50. We also need to initialize the socket. And we'll use the local host and the port that we used earlier. And then we'll add some throw exceptions. We also need to initialize the input and output streams. And so we're going to take that from the socket. So there's the input stream and now the output. Okay, and then we also need to write the login name. Since our accept client class takes the login name. So that's dout.write UTF login name. And we'll write another message to say that this user has logged in. So say the login name plus a space, and the message type is login. Next, we need to create the thread. So thread equals new thread, and we'll pass it this, and we'll start the thread. And the last thing we'll do is set up the JFrame. We'll create a new method for that. And so in this method, we're going to set the size and add our elements. So we're going to create a new panel. And the first thing we're going to add to this panel is the text area. So panel.add. And we want to add this as a scroll pane. So new J scroll pane. Pass that the text area. And we'll add the panel to the JFrame. Last thing we'll do in this method is set visible to true. Next, since we have this running, we want to create a while loop to keep it running. And so while true, we are going to append to the text area. So ta.append. We are going to append a new line. And we are going to read in from the input stream. So dn.read utf. We need to surround that with a try and a catch. And for testing, we'll add a main method. And we'll remove this later once we have a login menu. This is just going to create a new client. And we'll call this user1. Add some exceptions. And then in our chat server, let's add a main function here as well. And this is just going to create a new chat server. And the same exceptions. So let's run the chat server. And that chat server is running. Then we'll run the chat client. And we have user1 has logged in. So now let's try another user to see if the first window will read that. So user2 has logged in. And the first window has user2 has logged in. And so in the next video, we'll add a text field and some buttons so that the user can add their own input.